Have you ever had someone walk past your work, look at it, maybe even say, "That's really nice, you're so talented," and then just keep walking? Or someone comments online that they love what you make, but somehow that never turns into an actual sale. And after a while, it's easy to start thinking, maybe people just don't buy art anymore. Or worse, maybe my work just isn't good enough. But what most artists and makers don't realize is that people absolutely do buy creative work. They're already doing it every single day. The real problem is something else entirely. And once you understand what that is, selling your work becomes a lot less mysterious. Let me show you something. This is art. This is art. This is art. Someone created this, packaged it, listed it somewhere online, and eventually it ended up here. All of this is art, and it's not just gallery paintings or framed prints, but it's the mugs, the knitting, the jumpers, the jewellery, the ceramics, the little trinkets and notepads. Like, people buy creative work all of the time, which means when someone says people don't want to buy my artwork, what's usually happening is something else entirely. And in this video, I want to break down why people actually buy creative work, and more importantly, how you can start finding the people who want to buy your work. So the first thing we need to talk about is why people actually buy creative work in the first place, because this is something I think a lot of artists and makers misunderstand when they're trying to sell their work. When you're the person making the artwork, it's very easy to assume that someone will buy it because they appreciate the craftsmanship or because they understand the artistic value behind it. But that's almost never what's actually happening when someone decides to take something home with them. Most people don't walk around thinking, I need to buy art today. A lot of us do that when we're shopping small and supporting our fellow creators, but at its core, people buy things because they're responding to the feeling that they get when they see something that resonates with them. It might remind them of somewhere they've been or a moment that they care about. And sometimes it reflects their personality in a way that feels oddly specific, like it was made for someone exactly like them. And sometimes it's much simpler than that. They see it and they instantly picture it in their home, like in their living room, or fitting into their life in a way that just feels right. When someone decides to buy creative work, they're not just buying the object themselves, they're buying the meaning attached to it. That's why you can have two people standing in front of the exact same piece of work and have completely different reactions. One person might glance at it and just walk straight past without thinking twice, and another person might see it and immediately feel something, like the kind of reaction where they stop, they lean a little closer, and they think, I love that. And that difference doesn't usually come down to whether the work is objectively good or bad. More often than not, it comes down to taste. And once you start recognizing how wildly different people's taste actually is, it changes the way you think about selling your work. Because the goal shifts from trying to make everyone like it to something much more realistic. Finding the people who already will. And that is where things start to get interesting, because once you realize that taste is so personal, something that used to feel like rejection starts to look very different. But before we go any further, I just want to tell you quickly, if you enjoy thinking about this side of running your creative business, the mindset, the strategy, and the deeper lessons that don't always fit neatly into a YouTube video, then I have recently started writing over on Substack. It's basically a space where I can share deeper insights and behind the scenes thoughts about building a creative business and the things that I've learned along the way. So I am brand new to the space, but I'm already having some really great conversations there. So if you like reading and you want to dive a little deeper into this kind of conversation, I shall leave my Substack link in the description, or just search the Creative Juice Club. But for now, let's talk about something that a lot of artists and makers forget about when they're trying to sell their work. Now, I've already said taste is wildly different from person to person. Where this becomes important is in the moments that artists and makers tend to interpret that as rejection. So imagine you're at a market and someone walks past your table like without stopping or even glancing, or they pause for a second, they glance at what you made, and then they just move on. It's very easy in those moments to assume that your work itself must be the problem, that maybe it isn't good enough, or that people just don't value handmade things in the way that they used to. But most of the time, what's actually happening is far simpler than that. The work just didn't resonate with that particular person. And when you start thinking about it that way, those moments stop feeling like they're the only opinion that matter about the quality of your work. They're just a mismatch, because when the right person comes across your work, the reaction feels completely different. They slow down, they start to look properly, or they point something out to the person that they're with. And that moment is what every creative business is really built around. Not trying to make every single person who passes by like your work, but recognizing that there are people out there whose taste and personality already align with what you create. And once you realize that, you probably start to ask, okay, but how do I actually find these people? And listen, there isn't some magical place where all of your ideal customers are just waiting to discover you, but there are some very real ways to start putting your work in front of the right people who are most likely to connect with it. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So once you understand that selling creative work isn't about convincing everyone to like it, the next question becomes, how do you actually find people whose taste already aligns with what you make? Because this is where a lot of artists and makers end up stuck. You're posting your work online, you're setting up markets, maybe you're listing things on Etsy, but it often feels a bit like throwing things out into the world and just hoping the right person somehow stumbles across it. And whilst sometimes that can happen, there are actually some much more intentional ways to start finding your people. The first one is something I wish more creative business owners paid attention to, and it seems very obvious, but I don't think enough people truly look at this. Look for patterns in the people who are already buying and loving your work. If you've ever sold something before, or even just a few pieces, there is already information hidden in those sales. And a lot of the time, when someone places an order from a small business, the transaction happens, you pack it, you send it off, you feel that moment of excitement, and then move straight on to the next thing. But that order actually contains a lot of information that most people never look at. For example, have you ever had a completely random order come in and never actually looked at where that person discovered you? Did they come from Instagram? Did they come from Pinterest? Maybe Etsy search? Almost no one does this, but reach out and ask them. That is the most solid way that you'll find your answer. You can literally send a quick message saying something like, hey, thank you so much for your order. I'm always curious about how people discover my work. Would you mind sharing how you found me or why this product caught your eye? Most people who buy from small creative businesses are incredibly happy to answer that. They want to support you. They know that their feedback can help. And those small interactions can reveal things that you would never have guessed. You might find out that someone discovered you through a Pinterest pin that you did 2 years ago, or that they saw your work shared by another creator, or that a particular product popped up in their search result and it happened to be the exact thing that they were on the hunt for. So those clues start to show you where people are actually finding you. And once you know that, you can start putting more energy into the places that are already working. The second thing that helps enormously is placing your work in environments where your audience already exists. And I don't just mean posting randomly on social media. Think about where people who genuinely love your work already spend time. For example, if you make cozy illustrations about books and reading, your people are probably already spending their time in things like book talk, book clubs, and communities centered around reading. But here is the important part. The goal isn't to show up in those spaces and immediately say, hey, I sell this thing, you're gonna love it. Instead, think about how you can become part of the community first. Join conversations, comment on posts and share recommendations. Maybe someone's asking for book recommendations and you suggest one that you love. Maybe there's a discussion about cozy reads and you can jump in with your favorites. When you consistently show up and add value to the space, people start to recognize your name. They start to see you as someone who belongs in the community, not someone who just appeared to sell something. And naturally, curiosity starts to happen. People click on your profile, they discover what you make, and suddenly your work doesn't feel like a random product being pushed at them. It feels like something created by one of their own, because it was. Most of us are making things that we love ourselves, so it's not like you're trying to hoodwink people. That kind of organic discovery is often far more powerful than simply posting a link and hoping that someone clicks on it. The third thing that helps is learning to describe your work in a way that attracts the right person, because sometimes the issue isn't the artwork or creative piece at all, it's the way it's presented. If your listing just says something like art print, A4, high quality paper, that doesn't give anyone a reason to emotionally connect with it. But when you describe something in a way that reflects the feeling behind it, the right people can recognize themselves in it. For example, instead of a mushroom illustration print, it becomes a cozy woodland illustration for people who love forest walks and cottagecore vibes. So when the right person reads that, they instantly think, oh, that's me. And suddenly your work isn't just another product in a sea of products. Instead, it feels like something made specifically for them. Another really powerful thing you can do when you're trying to find your audience is simply show more of your world, your sketchbook pages, the materials you use, and the moment you are creating the piece. Because people don't just connect with objects, they connect with stories. So when someone can see the personality, the process, and the intention behind what you make, it gives them more reasons to feel connected to it. And connection is what turns something from that's nice into I want that. Now, here's something that surprises a lot of creative business owners when they first realize it. Even when someone genuinely loves your work, that still doesn't automatically mean that they'll buy it. And if you've ever experienced this, you'll know exactly what I mean. Someone stops at your market table, they tell you how beautiful something is, or they like your post, they save it, and they share it with a friend. But somehow, that moment of excitement never actually turns into a purchase. And it's really easy in those moments to assume that something's gone wrong. Maybe the price is too high, or they didn't like it as much as they said they did, and maybe they were just being polite. But a lot of the time, the real reason is much simpler than that. Liking something and feeling the need to buy it are two completely different things. Think about how many times you've seen something online and thought, I love that. You might even save it or send it to someone because it really caught your attention. But unless it connects to something happening in your life right now, the moment passes and you just move on. And sometimes it's even simpler than that. Sometimes someone genuinely loves your work, but it's just not within their budget at that particular time. That does not mean that the price is wrong, and it definitely doesn't mean you should start lowering your price or second guessing the value of what you make. It just means that right now, in that moment, in that person's life, your work isn't something that they can prioritize spending their money on. And that's an important thing to understand as a maker, because it's very easy to take that moment personally and assume that it reflects the quality of your work. But here's the other side of that I want you to understand as well. When someone really wants something, when it genuinely resonates with them, people are often willing to make space for it in their budget. They'll put money aside and come back later. They'll remember it. You see something and think, I don't need this, but I really want it. And this is why the real skill in selling creative work isn't about convincing someone that your artwork is good. It's helping the right person recognize why it matters to them right now. And that's where one of the most useful shifts in selling creative work comes in, because the goal is to help them recognize where it fits into their life. And there are a few really simple ways that you can start doing this. The first is showing your work in context. So instead of only sharing a product on a plain background, show it living somewhere? What does the print look like framed above a desk? What does the mug look like on a coffee table? When someone can picture something in their own life, it's much easier for them to imagine owning it. The second thing is to make the purpose of the piece really obvious. A lot of creative products get presented simply as objects themselves, but often what actually prompts someone to buy is the role it plays. For example, you might say, this makes a perfect gift for someone who loves gardening and growing their own vegetables, or this is for a friend who always says exactly what everyone else is thinking. When you describe work that way, the right person can recognize someone in their life or themselves that would want it right now. And the third thing that helps people make that decision in the moment is removing any friction around buying it. Make it easy for them to understand what it is, who it's for, and how they get it. That means things like clear pricing at markets, simple product descriptions online, and easy links to purchase. Because sometimes people genuinely love something, but if they have to work too hard to figure out how to buy it, the moment just passes. The things we buy from small creative businesses are almost never just things. This mug isn't just a mug. My best friend bought me this mug because she said that the colors were exactly the sorts of colors that she knows I'm drawn to. And this art print isn't just a Studio Ghibli fan art. I bought this one and actually several others from the same shop. And you might be thinking that I bought this because it's Studio Ghibli, but I have gone back to that shop and bought original art as well because the artist's style just feels so cozy to me, and I'll leave her shop in the description below as well so you can find it. There's something about the way she draws that makes her work feel warm and nostalgic, and every time she releases a new print, I end up going back to see what she's made next. And that's really the point that I want to leave you with. What you're creating isn't just about being technically good at what you do, it's about creating something that connects with people, something that reminds them of themselves or someone they love or a feeling that they want to keep. Because when that connection happens, the object stops becoming just a mug or a print, it becomes something meaningful in someone's life. And that is why people absolutely do buy art. You just need to find a way to connect them to it. And don't forget, if you want to go deeper into conversations like this, head over to my Substack and have a look at some of the articles that I've added there. I've got loads more to add, but you can find the link in the description below. Once you understand that connection is what really drives sales, growth stops being about constantly pushing harder, posting more, or trying to show up everywhere all of the time. Instead, it becomes about building a business that works with the way that people naturally discover and connect with your work. And if that's something you're trying to figure out right now, go watch this video, How I Built a Creative Business That Doesn't Rely on Hustle. You can watch it right here. Don't forget to subscribe as well. I have got so many more videos coming soon.